Welcome to Empowered by AI. I'm Michelle Muncy-Silva. This podcast is for women building what's next and using AI with intention. In Season 6, you'll hear from founders, educators, creatives, and builders who are actually using AI to think better, work smarter, and move with intention. We're learning from conversations about readiness, literacy, and taking action, because every episode gives you ideas you can use immediately. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome, Dr. Michelle. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Awesome. I'm happy. I'm happy to finally be here. I know, it's been a while, but I'm happy to be on here and to finally participate in this episode.
We are so happy to have you. Why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself to everyone, and we'll get a chance to dive in.
Absolutely. So my name is Dr. Michelle Singh. I have been in education over 20 years, and I work with educators and leaders and creatives, anyone who falls into those categories, to help them ultimately build whatever it is that they're working on. They could be building lessons, they could be building small businesses, they could be building a project, but I help them build with clarity and with courage and with care. And I am so passionate about that work because it's come from just working with students in a classroom to working with human beings and connecting and forging relationships and really helping them to do the work that they are called to do, that they are aligned with in a way that is human.
Mhm.
Yes.
And you're talking about some heavy duty demanding professions, right? And I know there's a lot of burnout in those fields. So
Yep.
when you hear people say people just don't care like they used to, what do you feel is the real diagnosis that is maybe beneath that surface of frustration?
Yeah, so I hear more often that, and I'm thinking about when I hear educators and leaders talk about learners or people they are guiding or leading, that they may be disinterested or maybe disconnected. I hear the word disengaged a lot, and sometimes they may even throw the word apathetic in there, right? So I hear those words often. Usually those kinda point to don't care, but I usually hear those words more, but in my work and in my research and in my experience, like, I've had to kinda dig beneath those labels, and for me, it's not a lack of care. What I have discovered is that it's more self-protection of the person who has those labels put on them.
Mhm.
When it comes to students, they do care, and they care deeply, but they are navigating systems and classrooms and even expectations that don't feel relevant and don't feel safe and don't feel like they fit it. And they don't wanna take that emotional risk, and so they self-protect. And, I mean, I know that from my experience as a learner, as an immigrant. I know that from my experience of seeing my daughter in classrooms as the only Black child. I know that from teaching in the public school system for over 15 years and still continuing to be an educator because I am a professor and have been a professor for over 10 years. But what all of that has, just showed me that is that disengagement, that disconnection, it just shows up when learners, because it's not just K through 12 students, we talking about everybody, right? We're talking about adults in work environments too, with cultures that don't honor them, right? They don't see themselves in those spaces, and they don't trust that what they do, what they produce, that their effort is gonna matter.
Mhm.
And so for them staying quiet, being detached is safer than showing up fully as themselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah.
It's a human condition. Yeah, it's not
Mhm.
it's not specific to any particular age group. And I love that you brought up your personal story because I know as a Jamaican immigrant, that's informing your work clearly. Because navigating systems that weren't designed with you in mind shaped the way you think about belonging, about visibility and voice in these learning spaces.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so I'm from Jamaica originally. I came to America with my family. We all migrated here when I was 9 years old. And so, 9-year-old girl from a little Caribbean island now plopped into one of the largest school districts in the country. And so, navigating school as this little Jamaican girl, this little immigrant girl, and it's not just being an immigrant. For me, it was also being multicultural because I'm half Black, half Indian. So that added a whole nother layer to my experience as well. And so navigating the school system, navigating the environments here, it really taught me about invisibility, not visibility, but invisibility. And I'm not talking about like the idea of indivisibility that shows up when people make fun of me, shows up as conflict. I'm not talking about that kind. I'm talking about the kind that made me compliant, the kind that made me just keep quiet and follow the rules and just do what everybody asked me to do, not the kind that made me show who I really was. So I was silent in a lot of ways. I didn't raise my hand. I experienced curriculum that did not fit my lived reality, my culture, and even how I made meaning of what I was learning. And learning in certain instances and certain phases of my educational career really didn't feel joyful. It didn't feel relational. It felt more like a transaction. I would say that I learned to be a people pleaser and a performer and a perfectionist because I was just producing. It, like I said, it was a transactional experience. It really wasn't relational. And for me, I'm realizing, now looking back and doing reflection and in my, as I'm in my research, that was disengagement. That was disconnection. That was me self-protecting. That was me disappearing. Right? And that's what disengagement looks like. And that's why we have to see it differently because it's not disruption. We have to see disengagement as like human data because it can look like all of the things that I just said. I did really great in school. I went to college on full scholarships, right? I have a doctoral degree, but I performed, I produced, I people pleased. I didn't show up as my full self. There was not belonging that was attached to the learning that I was a part of.
Hmm.
And so say all of that to say that my work really centers not just on making the learning accessible, but making the learning relational, making the experience of the learner feel like belonging so that they don't
Hmm.
have to disappear in the process and be compliant and be all of those things. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
And for someone hearing about it for the first time, what do you think is the most understood piece of equity work that you're bringing to the table with that equal methodology that you're intentionally reframing this experience for people?
Yeah. And so again, over 2 decades of experience and then all of my research, it's just kinda come together in what I've developed as an the equal methodology and how that helps people who don't really understand what equity work or work that centers belonging is. It's n That work is not about adding extras or add-ons. Though it's not about lowering the bar or taking away rigor, as you hear a lot in the educational space. The equal methodology for me says it's the total opposite. It says that equity and belonging is a daily practice. Again, not an add-on. It's also about noticing where you have practices and where even like there are systemic expectations and there are assumptions that are disconnecting the people who are a part of these spaces, whether they're students, whether they're teachers, whether they're leaders, like whatever that is. And for me, the equal methodology is a human-centered framework that helps teachers and leaders to lead and create and teach with empathy, with equity, and with excellence. And again, it frames equity and belonging as a daily practice. It's not something that you just perform during the month of February.
Right. And it's not, I think it sounds like an actionable antidote to the just going through the motions that
Absolutely.
so many people do. It's like you, as you mentioned, the idea of staying silent, the idea of just trying to perform to a perfection level standard
Mhm.
and not necessarily engage. It sounds like this is a more productive
Yeah.
avenue towards that.
Yeah, definitely more productive, and I love that you use the word antidote because it doesn't just focus on one aspect or one problem. It's comprehensive. There are five stages or five dimensions. So you have to evaluate the context. That starts with the human being first. Like, what are my biases? What are the expectations and the learning conditions and the systems and the assumptions that have guided me to make the decisions that I'm making and have guided me to lead in the way that I'm leading, right? And I'll tell you this, like I've used AI to generate reflection questions that have allowed me to really think about, are there any biases in the way that I responded to this? And are there any expectations when I'm expecting the students to do this that are my own and not does not belong to them? Like
Mhm.
AI has helped me to really like reflect. And that's where that evaluating the context comes in. And then the Q is qualifying the learning, making sure this is so important. It is rigorous because we often think that when we take away from what the curriculum or traditional curriculum gives us, it's not rigorous. It could be rigorous because it's relevant and it's responsive and it's reachable. I normally teach new teachers in as a professor, and I talk to them a lot about designing learning that has multiple access points, meaning students are accessing the information in ways that are aligned with how they learn, how they process, how they produce even. And they can enter and explore and even demonstrate their understanding in just a variety of ways. And
Mhm.
again, when it comes to that qualifying piece, I believe and I love storytelling because stories can be so powerful when you're giving students an entryway into content that is very uh dense.
Mhm.
Right? And lots of tools, like I've used and shared lots of tools with teachers like Pictree and Sora and Diffit and even Copilot because they can use these stories and turn them into videos and podcasts and songs and visuals and translations and even very like text on reading levels without lowering rigor, without lowering expectation. And I love the Q part because it's really about being so inventive in the learning and using the tools like AI tools to support that. And I know I'm going through because I'm thinking there are five dimensions. Be quick. The U is about belonging. Like that's the heart, right? And what I've learned from my research is that that belonging piece and emotional safety go hand in hand. Because
Mhm.
when the students don't feel safe, they self protect. As humans, we do that. Our nervous system does that, right? They self-protect. So emotional safety has to be like very foundational in that belonging. And so it requires human connection. It requires that we affirm identities because students are only going to stay engaged when they feel affirmed, when they feel safe, and when they don't feel like anything about them, whether it's their language, their family, their culture, whatever that looks like for them is being erased. And I'll tell you this, like when I was in college, freshman year, I had a class that I chose to take, African American literature. And I read Their Eyes Were Watching God in that class for the first time. And for the
Mhm.
first time in my educational career, I fell in love with a character, Janie Crawford. And it
Mhm.
was because as a Black character, she was allowed to be fully human. She wasn't a flat character. She had voice, she had desires, she had contradictions, she had growth. She wasn't simplified in characters and people of color are in a lot of the traditional curriculum that we are exposed to. And
Mhm.
I finally was able to like recognize myself inside of that character. And from that experience, I learned that It's so powerful when students can see themselves, finally see and feel themselves in the learning. It's not an
Mhm.
add-on right there. Like, it's at the center of the learning. And yeah, so last two, A is collaboration, to activate collaboration. A lot of times we feel like we have to do this alone. And this is really encouraging that engagement with others, whether that means community members or, parents and families, the students themselves. It's creating communities of care, creating to help create those ecosystems of excellence so that the students can flourish. And then the last part of the equal methodology is L, and it's leveraging evidence. And when I'm talking about evidence, I'm not just talking about numerical grades and scores. I'm talking about human data. I'm talking about all kinds of data, feedback and assessments and creativity, because we want to make sure that the learning is reachable and that it's visible for us as well as the students to see. I want to share a specific. I would say it's tied to the framework, it's tied to the equal methodology, but it's more related to how leaders and educators, how they can think about redesigning learning. And it's not necessarily going to be about, hey, which technology tool, which AI tool, which platform, but it's more so how can you provide this human-centered lens for learning and engagement and belonging and even sustainability in teaching and learning by asking yourself certain questions? And they're all tied to the different dimensions of the equal methodology. So the first one is the E, to evaluate the context. And so one of the questions that you can ask yourself is what pressures and what assumptions and what biases and what systems are shaping this learning activity, this lesson, this moment, this conversation. Because when you can even plot that in AI and get additional reflection questions to even help you unpack it even more. So that's the E. What are these things that are shaping the experience, right? Because what we want to find out is if this disengagement, this disconnection is coming from the individual or is it coming from the conditions around them? And this is going to help us get to that. The next one is the Q for qualifying learning. And this one is you're trying to determine if what you're teaching, if the task, activity, lesson, if it's rigorous and if it's relevant, if it's responsive and if it's reachable. So are we asking learners to perform rather than engage deeply, rather than to connect their experience and their different ways of knowing and meaning making? So we have to ask ourselves that question to determine if the learning is rigorous and relevant and responsive and reachable. The U is uplift belonging. And for that, this is simple. Who feels seen here? And who might be left out, even if they're quietly left out? Whose voice and perspective and story and experience and even language should be present so that we are affirming the identities of those learners who are in front of us or those people who are in front of us. We have to be considerate of that. That's a part of what belonging is. And then the collaboration, the A, activate collaboration. Who else needs to be a part of this lesson or activity or conversation or decision or story? Which students, which families, which colleagues, which community partners, which organizations can add meaning and shared responsibility. And then finally, the L, what evidence, leveraging the evidence. So, what evidence outside of numerical test scores shows that thinking is happening, shows that growth is happening, shows that curiosity is there, and even mastery. And if a learner were to look at the feedback that they're getting for this, would they feel affirmed? Would they feel clearer? Or is it making them feel smaller?
Yes. And I think that's why your questions are so important because people are coming to this technology, they don't know what they don't know. So the idea of planting that seed to ask these questions as you're designing a curriculum or as you're designing a lesson or as you're designing a presentation, think
Right.
of your audience. This is a human need that we all have to feel seen. So whether your audience is 12 or 39, what kinds of questions can we ask ourselves, ask of the tools in order to make sure that is a more equitable experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Always go back to learning being relational rather than transactional. The care that's a part of it. Like I go back to those things when I'm using the technology, and of course, I use it, and I'm really excited about it. But I also am I also use it with caution because there are things about the tech, like you said, there's a lot of things that we don't know that we don't know. And we really have to like be in the research and understand what's happening behind the scenes. We only see what it produces, but we don't know what it takes, what's happening behind the scenes. Like I've read research that highlighted like environmental issues and pollution with AI and data, the historical data that it pulls from is basically racist and biased information that exists. And we have to question it. We have to use it with caution. So I'm just going to leave it there. Be very intentional and use it with caution because the technology, I would say, does not create the equity and the care. The humans do. It just gives us a way to do it, but we have to determine the best way to do it. And we also want to make sure that we are providing feedback that heals the students and not harm them. And let me tell you, I've used AI for that. I have a cloned voice with 11 labs where I'll write out my feedback and I'll put it in there, get the file and share, especially for classes where I'm teaching all online. Because the students are only reading the words, but when they hear my voice, it becomes real. Like I'm a human being, right? I've
Yep.
used Hey Jen to create translations of my feedback being spoken in the language of the students. I mean, it's tools can make this connection so real. And I'll tell you just this semester, the biggest compliment that I received from a student, and it was in a completely online class, and they said that I made the experience human. Like for me, that was, and it was because of the feedback, the power affirming feedback. It's hard to build connection when you're virtual, but when
Yeah.
you are utilizing these tools to bring your human self into it so that they can see and hear you, even if it's in a video and audio, it like really matters to them. When you
Mhm.
call them by name, when when you're creating feedback and you're, really using that power affirming language, it makes a difference. So
Yeah.
yeah, these 5 dimensions will work together. It really helps for me, support the ideas of just belonging and what equity work is really about.
Yes. And sometimes I think people that are feeling this disengagement, feeling this burnout, they're often thinking of it individually. They're thinking of it personally, like it's a personal failure. And I know instead, oftentimes you want to think about this as a system piece. So,
Mhm.
in your restful teacher and restful leader, your rooted and ready work, what signals tell you that a culture, not an individual, needs this kind of intervention?
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's such a layered question. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, so, yeah, when burnout and disengagement show up, I think that's the first signal. That's the first data, a piece of data that tells us we're dealing with. For me, it's more of a systemic issue, and then that systemic issue trickles into the culture. It's definitely not individual. You are not to blame for your burnout. Your burnout is a systemic issue. In the work that I've done with educators and leaders and Restful Teacher and Restful Leader, and even in the events that I'm hosting for Rooted and Ready, what I look for are patterns, right? As folks who are very high performing, multifaceted and multi potential, meaning they can do everything. Pretty much, right? They're deeply committed. But guess what? We're also exhausted. We are also like overextended, and that can cause us to disconnect, and we can question our purpose. I mean, it's happened to me. We can question our own motivation, and we often think that it's our fault. Like something is wrong with me why this is happening. But it is not it's not an individual problem. It is a system problem. And it becomes, I think it becomes a human problem when we are not recognizing that we can do something about it.
Mm.
When we are not, when we think that we have to prioritize ourselves. Well, no, when we not prioritize ourselves, when we are putting ourselves last. That's not even prioritizing ourselves, right? And when our rest feels like something that we have to earn. And when we don't have boundaries because we feel like boundaries are weaknesses. And when we just are, we produce and we're told to do things out of the goodness of our heart and we're okay with that. Because out of the goodness of your heart, the kids are gonna, the people are gonna, you're so good at this. They're gonna, let me just do it out
Mhm.
of the goodness of my heart because who else is gonna do it?
Yep.
These are systemic failures. This is even exploitation because I can tell you, we're I got an email from one of my from an institution. My The college classes now are gonna be, like, doubled in number because enrollment is higher, which is great, but what does that mean for me? That doesn't mean that I'm getting paid more. That means I'm getting double the work, double the stress, and doing it out of the goodness of my heart if I don't say something. To me, that's exploitation because the systemic failures trickle down into this culture, and this culture is teaching
Yeah.
people to survive, not even thrive, survive.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so those are some of the things I would say that I look for and signals that tell you that it's the culture and not the individual. And that's why, like, I do the Restful Teacher and the Restful Leader programs. I am actually doing a Restful Teacher challenge where I'm having these candid, real honest, real raw conversations with professionals from mental health professionals to medical professionals, HR professionals, educators, and leaders, where we are talking about these kinds of things that it's almost like you're not allowed to say it out loud when you're in the system.
Mhm.
Yeah, right?
Very much so. A lot of this is taboo. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have to, what I've come to realize is that we have to stop asking what's wrong with us and start looking at, okay, what is it that's inside this space, that is inside this culture that I'm a part of, that is
Mm.
inside this institution or system that is making it hard for me to sustain, that is
Mhm.
making it hard for me to show up fully as me, making me withdraw and making me silent, silent in meetings and making me comply. What is causing me mental overload and emotional withdrawal and overwhelm? So burnout, these things are not personal. Like they are not a personal failure. They are a systemic failure. And we have
Mm.
to be able to name how they affect us because we then have to take action to ensure that we can sustain ourselves in these systems that are just not changing. I mean, we've been talking about these systemic failures probably since they were formed, right? And nothing changes, right?
That is the beast of all of those. Yes.
So how can we create a life within these systems? Because yeah, if you're an educator, like I'm a professor, that doesn't mean that I'm gonna quit my job as a professor. But how am I gonna create
Right.
a life inside this system that sustains me?
Right. And
I
and I
have to
think
do that.
oh, 100%. Yeah, you have to own the action that you wanna take. And I think
Mhm.
so many women especially feel that pressure to do it all because we can have it all. That was the message that we were raised with, while also holding all of the emotional labor for their communities, for their families. I think women are especially tired because we're holding on to all the things,
Yep.
right? More so than anyone else.
Yep.
So, what boundaries or mindset shifts have been essential for you in sustaining your work without sacrificing yourself in the process?
Oh my gosh. So I think one of the biggest ones for me, because like you said, I'm carrying all of this. Mother, wife, teacher, leader, involved in church, involved in community, doing this, you name it, we're doing it, right? And so for me, it's been coming to the realization that the overworking and the overgiving And even in like, even the high functioning, because I'm a high functioning person, but that high functioning for me is disguised as over functioning. Because I could do all the things and do it well, but it's over functioning, it's overworking, it's overgiving. And I had to realize that, okay, these are not badges of honor at all. Not at all. Like, I come from a culture, in Jamaican culture, working hard is like the thing. It's a badge of honor in a Jamaican culture to have multiple jobs. Like, I've had multiple jobs since I could work. I'm good now because after reflection and healing, I'm like, okay, that is not something that I want. That is a cycle that I want to break. And I
Yeah.
do not want my child to think that overworking is the way to go, because it is not. So I've had to come to realize those things. They're not badges of honor.
Mhm.
Um, Doing the work that we do, the work that's in the caregiving, that's in the nurturing, it doesn't require me to self-sacrifice. I can have a balance. I can care deeply about people and I can care for myself, right? I can do for people and I could still prioritize myself. But I've had to put boundaries in place for that. And I've also had to embrace ease. And I know when we hear the word ease, we're like thinking of the word easy. Easy means maybe we associate it with laziness, but for me, ease definitely is not that. For me, when I think of ease, I want to do something with ease. I want to do it in alignment with who I am and what I'm called to do, because that is what's going to make it sustainable for me. Because when I start overdoing and overworking and overfunctioning and overgiving, it's not sustainable.
Right.
It is not. Yeah,
Definitely not pretty on the tail end.
absolutely not. And
No.
an- another big thing for me was the perfectionism and the people pleasing and the producing. Like, I really had to dig deep and say, this is what I've done all of my life. This is where it stops, right? I am, my output is not my value. And I had to really work hard to get to that truth. Um, Really work hard to get to that truth. I mean, it's something that I work on all the time. That perfectionism just does not go away. It does not. It's work. It's like work every day. And so I really had to get clearer about who I am as a human being. Outside of being a mom, outside of being a wife, outside of being a teacher, a leader, and all of the things, I had to relearn myself. And even in some of those cases, I had to learn myself because I didn't know this part of myself as
Yeah. No,
well.
you never had time.
Never exactly, never had time. So, I mean, there are a lot of mindset shifts and boundaries that I've put in place, but I have definitely made sure that rest for me now is a strategy. I call rest the leadership strategy. Like, I schedule it on my calendar the same way I'll schedule a meeting. Time for rest. And what I talk about in the Restful Teacher and Restful Leader are the 7 types of rest that a human being needs, and this is based on Dr. Sandra Dalton's research. There's 7 types of rest, and you can practically incorporate it in your day. It doesn't have to be, "Oh, Imma go to a spa day." That's not it. It's what can I do for 10 minutes, for 5 minutes, but do it consistently and intentionally, that replenishes my energy, that can give me the fuel I need to continue or to do something else. I have to be very intentional about it, and I also have to be very honest with myself, just about what works and what doesn't. Because I may try some, like a rest strategy, I've gone to mindfulness classes, and I'm sitting there and they're like, now close your eyes and deep breath and visualize. That does not work for me. Stillness does not work for me. And so I have to be honest with myself and actually find things that will work for me.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe it's going outside and going for a walk. Maybe
That
that's your
exactly.
yeah.
The nature helps me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to really be honest with yourself about that. Just because that's what someone else does for their rest doesn't mean that's going to work for you. I love music. Putting on the music and just listening and chilling and just feeling it, that replenishes me. I'm going yes. So You have to be honest about that. And so again, those are the things that are at the heart of the Restful Teacher and the Restful Reader, and even the Rooted and Ready events that I'm doing starting in January. We talk about these things, about boundaries, about rest, and designing these rhythms that are suitable for who you are in your phase of life right now, and in all of the roles that you play in your life right now.
Yeah, and that to me connects right back to we don't necessarily know because we haven't slowed down long enough to know what works for us because we're always working for someone else.
Oh my
So
gosh,
what
yes.
works for us, and then just what you said about your output is not your value is just let's say that again for the cheap seats. I mean,
Oh
it's like,
gosh.
hello, are we hearing that?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I think so many of us have, quite frankly, grown numb to feeling
Yes.
invisible or depleted or stuck in the disengagement. I really I think that numbness, it takes a minute to wake up from that
Yeah.
alone, let alone get to know yourself. So what do you feel would be one small shift that the listener can make this week to start remembering who they are,
Okay. Yeah.
reclaiming that agency, that energy of self?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, I, hands down, instead of asking what you need to do, because we always come to self first. What do I need to fix? I need to fix myself. Don't worry about that. Ask yourself, what can I release? What can I no longer tolerate? And focus on that. Because so it brings me back to a conversation I was having with a coach, and she told me something that just stuck. And she said, just because you can does not mean you have the capacity for it.
Mm.
What can you release? What can you no longer tolerate? Just because you can do it, because we can do it all. But just because you can do it does not mean you have the capacity to do it. You might need to release some stuff that's causing you to feel invisible and depleted and disconnected and disengaged, because you are carrying so much more than you should, because of all of the roles that you and expectations that that make up who you are right now. So what can you release? What can you no longer tolerate? It starts with naming that one thing.
I feel like we need to get out like a piece of paper and a pencil and start
Yes.
just like writing, right? So ladies, if you're listening while driving, please be careful. But you're gonna want to think about this. Sounds take maybe some auditory notes here. What are you've got me on a roll now. So I know you wanted to talk about some reflection questions. And I'm thinking, what are you ready to release is number one. What else? Because I'm ready for more.
Well, I'll talk about the tolerate thing, because that was actually a practice that I did. What will I no longer tolerate? I made a list, probably about 20 or so things that just didn't serve me anymore in my life, in the phase of life that I was in. So just kind of a little bit of a context. My daughter was going off to college. She's an only child. So she's at Howard University, and she's finishing up her senior year now. But when I did all of this healing work, it was at the time that she was leaving. So I was becoming an empty nester. So I had my daughter when I was 22 years old. Basically, my daughter was my whole entire adult life. I didn't know what adult lifing was without having my daughter, without being a mother, without being a wife. And so now I am entering a phase in my life where I don't know what to do, and I didn't know myself. And I had to relearn myself. So I created a list of things. Okay, these are the things that no longer serve me and that I will no longer tolerate. And I'll tell you, something simple on that list was, I don't like driving in this Miami traffic. It does not do my nervous system well at all.
Does not serve me.
It does not serve me. And so I will be so quick to take an Uber, because, like, especially if I'm going to an event where I actually have to teach or, do something, I know that it's going to pull a lot of energy out of me, and I'm going to show up and not be able to really be my full self. And so I will ask my husband to take me. I will ask my little cousin to take me. So we'll call an Uber, but I will not drive.
Not if it's going to remove you from being present.
And something, I read a book at that time, Rachel Rogers' book, Everyone Should Be a Millionaire or something, whatever that title was, something with millionaire. But she talked about in the book, or the biggest takeaway I got was, what can you do? Like, what can you outsource? And it's okay to outsource certain things. And I know like cultural, family, societal expectations tell us that we should not, we have to do certain things in our role as women. You got to do laundry, you got to do cook, but I can outsource those things and free up emotional, mental space and capacity in my life so I can focus on the things that I want to do. I hate laundry and I don't do laundry, y'all. Granted, my husband will do it, but I don't do it.
That's me with washing dishes. My husband will wash dishes. I don't. That's what dishwashers are for. I don't.
Yes. But yeah,
Give me a floor to mop or a laundry to do, I'm good. But take this other, I will not tolerate.
yes. So yes, what can you release? What will you no longer tolerate?
There you go. I love it. I love it. And we are all the more prepared to do that after listening to you. So Dr. Michelle, thank you so much for bringing your full self to the table and letting us get to know you and get to know your processes, because we're going to be all the better for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for having me. And if any of your listeners want to connect, it's easy. connectwithmichelle.com.
I love it. I love it.
That's Michelle with 2 L's.
Yes, because that's the way we're supposed to spell it.
Exactly. There's
so
just no other way. That's just the right
so
way.
you know. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to be sure to send everyone listening your way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
You've been listening to Empowered by AI, and I'm your host, Michelle Muncy-Silva. If something from this episode clicked, don't let it stop here. Take one idea and try it out this week. And if you want to go deeper, head over to the Empowered by AI, the Slay Effect YouTube channel, where you can watch demos and walkthroughs from our guests today and so many others. Like, subscribe, and join us there so you don't miss out on what's coming next. All the links and resources are in the show notes. I'll see you next time.